Um, with that, I'd like to lead us into our next segment. We are going to be discussing some very unique topics around religion and spirituality in a world in crisis. And when we notice in a world still locked down in pandemic, the cities of America are in flames and people are talking and taking to the streets around the world. At this time of deep crisis and unprecedented opportunity for transformation, there are the voices of faith. And where are they? How are religious leaders responding to the climates we're facing? And what shared aspects of spirituality are offering hope and unity? Today, we have Reverend Deborah Moldow of the Garden of Light. We'll be hosting an amazing conversation with Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, founder and spiritual director of Agape Spiritual Center, as well as Dr. Jenna, director, Brahma Kumari's Meditation Museums. She's a host and America Meditating Radio, as well as Reverend Victor, oh, bless his heart, Kazanjian. Thank you for that. And he is the director, executive director of the United Religions Initiative, and Audrey Kitagawa, who is the chair of the Parliament of World Religions, as well as Tay Day Prince, who will be sharing artistic perspectives and has an amazing video to share with us at the end of our time together. So with that, Deborah, I fully welcome you and all of your guests into this space, and would love to hear where this conversation takes us.
Thank you so much, Rachel. This is a wonderful space of World Unity Week and so many beautiful programs. And deep thanks to you, to John Raymer, to Ben Boulder, and everyone who has worked so hard to organize not only a program, but a whole week of amazing, beautiful, uplifting programs. Hats off. So welcome to Religion and Spirituality in a World in Crisis, a program of World Unity Week. I am Reverend Deborah Moldow. I'm an interfaith minister. And I founded the Garden of Light, a proud sponsor organization of World Unity Week, 6 years ago, when I noticed a powerful spiritual impulse emerging across the globe and across any differences of religion or even non-religious orientation. And no one was talking about it, much less exploring its potential to accelerate the evolution of human consciousness. And today, as Rachel mentioned, we find ourselves in a time of multiple crises. 100 years ago, we would have been turning to the voices of faith for guidance. But our secular society looks to science for answers and to politicians for guidance. Heaven help us. So the whole world is reeling now from the effects of COVID-19, causing great suffering and death, as well as devastating loss of livelihood for countless people. And at this pivotal moment, we are also rising up to say no to the effects of centuries of prejudice and unacceptable systemic racism. And these simultaneous situations don't even begin to diminish the ongoing threats to the future of humanity, such as climate change, the poisoning of our water, our air, and our soil, the return of ultranationalism, or the unconscionable existence of nuclear weapons. So we might ask, where are the voices of faith? Well, 4 of them are here with us today, and each one of them is an extraordinary human being with a great mission in life. So we're very proud to have them with us today. Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith is the founder and spiritual director of Agape International Spiritual Center. Sister Dr. Jenna is director of the Brahma Kumari's Meditation Museums and host of America Meditating Radio. The Reverend Victor H. Kazanjian is the executive director of the United Religions Initiative. And Audrey Kitagawa is chair of the Parliament of the World's Religions. So I've asked each one of these wonderful guests to offer some reflections, and then we'll have a discussion among them. And at the close, we're going to showcase a very special video called Love One Another by Teda Prince, who will introduce it himself. And this video includes appearances by his uncle, John Legend, and two of our guests today. So I'd like to begin by hearing from the heads of two of the most prominent international interfaith organizations, the Parliament of the World's Religions and the United Religions Initiative. And we're going to start today with Audrey Kitagawa. Audrey and I first met at the United Nations when she was working with the Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict. She is the head of the Light of Awareness International Spiritual Family, which is based in Hawaii. And she is chair of the Parliament and its UN task force as well. And as many of you may know, the Parliament of the World's Religions is the oldest interfaith organization since its first gathering back in 1893. So Audrey, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Deborah.
I'm so happy to have you here.
And thank you for recounting how long we go back together. Since 2000, yeah. It's over 20 years ago.
Yes, quite amazing. And the world is changing rapidly in that time, right?
Indeed, it has changed quite a bit.
So how would you characterize this moment that we're in today?
I think this is a moment of pause and reflection. The pause because we've literally been shut down and all of our behaviors and activities of normalcy have gone out the window. And, our social relationships have been, we are now in social isolation. Some states are opening up, but more statistics are coming out. So we'll have to see how the response to the rise of the COVID in various states, we'll have to see what the response will be. And it has caused a time of reflection as well, as our employment opportunities have shut down. And so much has shut down. So literally the world came to a stop. And this cause for reflection has really also brought up to the forefront of our awareness and consciousness the best and worst of humanity. And, the long-standing biases and prejudices, the gender inequalities, the economic inequalities, the kinds of leaders that we now have that either unify or divide and polarize us. And we cannot live in a state of denial about our need to address these many symptoms, which have been pre-existing for many generations before, of course, the rise of COVID. But it certainly has been heightened by this pandemic. And we must also go to causation. How is it that all of these disparities have come about? What is the analysis that we have to undertake to see what has been the cause of all of the symptoms that are reflected in our communities and the global landscape as well? And so we really have to see take this moment to deeply reflect about how it is that we have come to this place in time. And it's also very good that these matters have been heightened in our awareness, because it also addresses the role that we must play as individuals and as communities and as global citizens in addressing these great disparities, the biases, the prejudices, the inequalities that we have seen. And this is a moment of transformation, and we should all take seriously the responsibility that we have to create positive transformation that will create positive solutions rather than being reactive, because it's not as if we did not know that these inequalities existed, but really we're being called now to create positive solutions. And this is what this moment in time is showing us: the quietude of the pause and the opportunity to reflect. And then what shall we do about what we have reflected upon?
Thank you, Audrey. How do you see religions and religious leaders exerting influence in this time of transformation?
Well, religious communities have been with us from the beginning of time. And this speaks to the importance of our faith traditions in our lives. And the influence is with respect to our daily life and how we are informed in terms of our values, our morals, our ethical principles by our respective faith traditions, and how we are able to implement and translate what we have learned into our daily lives. So it does not, all the teachings don't stay in our minds as philosophy. They actually become, implementable practices that we must apply in our daily lives. And how we live with our families, because where we are is the holy ground. And we have to be able to apply it where we are. Otherwise, it'll just be beautiful words living in our minds and, philosophies, but we are not able to implement the teachings. And I think the faith traditions have always encouraged us to live the sacred word, and how we are in communities. And everything that goes on in the global landscape ultimately is a reflection of the collective consciousness of the individuals within that society, within the world. So we each have great responsibility to be able to undertake the assiduous inner discipline and practice to establish that ground, ourselves on that ground of sacred being, and to be that sacred expression that is the expression of love, kindness, compassion. And, my wonderful spiritual mother said, God is love. So every moment that we live, we have the opportunity to have loving thoughts, loving speech, and loving action. And therein, in the seemingly ordinariness of daily life, we have the opportunity to actualize the living reality of God here now in our daily lives and conduct. And if we all collectively practice this, we would certainly have a different reflection staring back at us from the external landscape that is ever changing and impermanent. But our place and practice must be continuous, must be disciplined, and we have to train ourselves to remain in that sacred ground of being.
Beautiful. So I hear you saying that it's less about the religious leaders and what they have to tell us now than it is about us as individuals beginning to really live those teachings and bring them forth in our lives and in the world.
Well, who are religious leaders but they're individuals? And hopefully our leaders are themselves the expressions of that spiritual discipline and practice, and their lives are informed and shaped by ethical principles and conduct, values, and an inner code that really all religions teach. The sacred texts arise from these beautiful universal spiritual laws of love, peace, harmony, joy. And if we have leaders, religious, political, or otherwise, individuals who have great responsibility but abuse that responsibility by themselves not having undertaken an assiduous spiritual practice and discipline, and seeing to it what they are minding in the garden of their life. And, if they are cultivating bitterness, resentment, retaliatory actions, then that is contrary to what our sacred texts teach us, that we must learn to forgive, that we must learn to develop the heart of understanding. And so this requires a type of leader that is open and receptive and moves from that place of humility to be able to be a student of life and to learn from everyone. And so every head of a corporation, every religious leader, whether you are a leader or not a leader, we are all individuals, and no one is exempt from having to undertake that personal journey of being informed about these ethical principles and practices, having proper values and knowing what your values are, and that you abide by these core values and principles, and that hopefully they will be truthfulness, as Mahatma Gandhi said, satyagraha, nonviolence, ahimsa, and he created a whole movement primarily based on these two important principles. And these are very important principles to apply in our daily lives because it goes to our credibility, our sense of dignity and honor, and the honor that we also give to other people to know that we show up having credibility, that we are honorable ourselves. So it informs all of our relationships, how we conduct ourselves in life as individuals. So it's very important. And when we select our political leaders, we should look for these indices not only of competence based upon experience, but also upon the quality of the heart and the quality of the character to care for others and to be able to themselves be truthful and be honorable people.
Thank you, Audrey. And thank you for the Parliament's contribution with the global ethic that it has put forward as an interfaith statement, where we get to see how people of different faiths are coming together around these values that you've been talking about and encouraging them in ourselves and in one another. And it's wonderful to see the interfaith organizations really living those values.
Well, thank you so much for raising the Parliament's global ethic. I have
it
around me all the time. And I just really want to quickly talk about or give the 5 directives of this global ethic. And the first is nonviolence and respect for life. And the second is solidarity and a just economic order. The third is tolerance and a life of truthfulness. The fourth is equal rights and partnership between men and women. So it's very important, this gender equality. And the fifth is sustainability and care for the earth. So, these principles inform, these 5 directives informs and creates the foundation of the work of the Parliament. And so the global ethic is a very important signature document and a document that guides the work of everything that the Parliament does.
Thank you so much. Universal values, indeed.
That's right.
So another organization that has arisen more recently is the United Religions Initiative. The United Religions Initiative is a grassroots interfaith organization that was born almost exactly 20 years ago. It's going to have its birthday on Friday, June 26th, which will be celebrated here on the platform for World Unity Week. And in those short 20 years, the United Religions Initiative has birthed more than 1,000 cooperation circles of people of different faiths in more than 100 countries around the world. Just astonishing movement of the peoples. And we are so honored to have its executive director with us today, Victor Kazanjian. And Victor, you are stewarding this global expression of interfaith cooperation. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you a little bit about what's going on in the world. Where are faith and interfaith voices having an impact and how?
Thank you so much, Deborah. And thank you for all your work, and including all the work you did to midwife the United Religions Initiative over the years. So it's so beautiful, and obviously to our sisters and brothers in Unify and Unity Earth and Uplift. And it's also just so lovely to be with this circle of yourself and Audrey and Sister Jenna and Michael, and also to experience the extraordinary work of Teda Prince. And here we are in the Garden of Light during Unity Earth Week. And it's an amazing garden filled with light and love that beams through all of the diversity of each of us, reflecting the divine source of light and love as our animal siblings, as well as our sisters and brothers of the plant world. And of course, our beloved Earth, Mother Earth, in whom we live and move and have our being. So I want to just say a little bit about my own experience in this. And that starts with that I am a child of light, fed by the light of all beings who birthed me and nurtured me and continue to nurture and inspire me, like my wife, Michelle, and two sons, Jeremy and Kyle, and my friends and the community of people in URI, so many beautiful people dedicated to creating cultures of peace, justice, and healing for the earth and all living beings. And as an expression of the divine, the great light, the great spirit known to us in so many named and unnamed ways. But you know, I'm also a child of shadow. I'm a grandchild of genocide, a witness to the atrocities and injustices committed throughout time against people and planet. And as such, I'm aware of the deep shadows that are moving across our garden of light, shadows around us and shadows within us. So I guess I want to name some of those shadows. Audrey already spoke to this a bit, but I think it's so important to name those shadows because we're asking for faith and interfaith voices, leaders at the grassroots, leaders of institutions, about to step up into this moment and to speak about both shadow and light. So shadows. So there's sickness and death and disruption caused by coronavirus. There's the devastation and dislocation caused by wars and conflicts. There's the fear of nuclear annihilation. There's the assault on the first peoples of this planet, their lives and their lands, indigenous lives and lands. There's the interpersonal and structural violence of patriarchy that assaults the lives of women and girls every hour of every day. They're the cries of our animal siblings and our Mother Earth as humanity continues to pillage and rape the planet. As Audrey said, there's the rise of anti-democratic leaders in the United States and so many parts of the world, fanning flames of division. And then there's this scourge and this deep sickness of supremacies. The supremacies built upon extremist beliefs that lift one group over another in terms of race or gender or religion or sexual orientation, economic status, age, culture, nationality, ability, and in particular in this moment, the sickness of white supremacy. And one of its most insidious manifestations, racism. And it's this systems and structures of supremacies that violate not only human rights, but the tenets of all the world's wisdom, traditions because they dehumanize others, right? They dehumanize others and rob others of their humanity, turning them into some diminished object of someone's insecurity, ignorance, fear, greed, lust, or desire for power or profit. And so these supremacies, including and especially white supremacies, is also a rejection of the divine. And it's a desecration of the sacred. And so that's really important for us to understand. We are talking about something that pertains to the sacred, a desecration of the sacred, the reflection of the divine, the Great Spirit in every living being. And we've been hearing so much this week in so many powerful ways about the illusion of separation and how that illusion is sort of at the root of this destruction, devastation. And so it's the shadows of the world that obscure our ability to see the interconnectedness of all living things, that we each live as one among many, and yet beneath the ground of our individual beings, we are one being. We're one living organism, all life interdependent. And so it's into this that these voices of people of different beliefs, religious, spiritual, indigenous, humanist, agnostic, secular, people of all beliefs are calling our attention. And this is the essence of what we call the interfaith movement. Interfaith is far too small a word to describe people of all beliefs, all humanity, who shine the light on our interconnectedness and reveal the beauty of our diversity. To reveal that in our beautiful garden of light, where each person, each plant, each animal, and each created being appears unique, in fact, under the surface, at our roots, we're connected. And in the words of my spiritual mentor, Howard Thurman, we are all watered by the same source. Our roots are watered by the same source. So in my work at URI and with other faith partners, the Parliament of the World's Religions, Religions for Peace, all of these extraordinary interfaith folk, I see grassroots people working together every day, dismantling the structures of supremacy and building this sense of interconnectedness. And it's that I think will help shine a light through those shadows, pierce the shadows, and guide us forward. But it also means that we have to look at the ways in which our own traditions are part of the shadow, that the shadow exists in our traditions, that the shadow exists in ourselves, that we all too often then project that shadow, if it's unexamined, out into the world, and we end up with the sorts of situations and leaders that we have right now, who are projections of that shadow. So as we talk today, awakening that sense of interconnectedness and also speaking into both light and shadow feels to me to be a really important part of what this moment calls.
Oh, how beautiful, dear Victor. Thank you so much. That is truly the spirit of the Garden of Light, as well as the United Religions Initiative. And I'm very interested by the fact that both you and Audrey, as heads of interfaith organizations that bring people very specifically of different religions together, both spoke about spirituality and the individual responsibility to bring forth our better natures, shall we say. And again, it's interesting to me that we're not hearing so much the voices of individual religions as we are this more universal call for us to take the teachings and the beautiful philosophies of the various religions and apply them now and work with them within ourselves and within our world so that we can move forward and live very differently on this planet than we have been for the past couple of 100 years.
So Deborah, I just wanted to interject here that although we're talking about interfaith, what Victor is addressing, as well as myself, and what you were also mentioning, is we're talking about transcendence. That ground of being that ultimately transcends every religion, but out of which that sacred ground of being, all religions arise. So at this stage in our evolvement, in the evolvement of the consciousness, we are moving to transcendence rather than the insularities of any religion. And the interfaith movement is to create that dilation of the insularity, lens of insularity, to the global lens of engagement, and where we ultimately recognize that these religious figures, structures, etc., ultimately are in a transcendental state. And the entire flow is to decondition and deconstruct our thinking that has been rigidified, and we need to move ultimately to transcendence.
That is truly the moment that we're in, isn't it? And it's a call that goes out to every single one of us. So thank you so much. And thank you both, Victor and Audrey, for so beautifully embodying the spirit of your organizations and their meaning in the world today. Because this movement that some have called interspirituality, it's very hard. We don't have new words for the new things that are emerging on our planet, but it's definitely standing on the shoulders of the interfaith movement, when in the beginning, people came as their religion of birth to speak across a divide to the other. And what we are discovering is that there truly is no other. So thank you to both of you. And I would like now to introduce our next two guests, who are both just amazing examples of the emerging global spirituality. They are leading voices in very different ways, but equally magnificent. So Sister Jenna, who is now Sister Dr. Jenna, and it's not easy to put doctor when you're sister, right?
Take it out. You can take it out.
Sister Jenna, I hope you all are familiar with her already through her Popular America Meditating Radio show, or as the director of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Museums in Washington, D.C. She is an award-winning spiritual mentor and author, and she has really quite a unique mission, I think, in Washington, to be in that challenging environment.
The jaws of the lion.
Exactly.
I don't know why I like that place.
Together.
I don't know why I love that position, to be in the jaws of a lion. It
you
almost
have chosen it,
purpose.
or it has chosen you.
So please don't go on much longer about all of that telltale of the things that I've done. I don't even think I've even matched half of the call that God has ordained for me. But thank you for inviting me to be in the space with you, Audrey, and everyone else. It's been great to see you and to share in your space. I think that this particular time that we're in, and I think many of us had similar feelings, running many meditation places and being a part of a very large female-ran spiritual movement called the Brahma Kumaris. I think it surprised us too that we had to close down 9,000 of our branches in 120 countries. There was always an idea that when the world would go into crisis, we would be there. But we thought being there meant to be physically there. So as we endured also the pandemic and the lockdown, what I loved about it is that it gave me even more time to reflect and think about my relationship with myself, my relationship with God, my relationship with the souls that I'm in service to, my relationship to the environment, my relationship to all of humanity. And I found myself returning to the importance of my inner cleansing. That I think this time, I don't care how grand you were, whether you were a billionaire or a mogul in the media, or even a village urchin, you suffered the same plight We were all in this same situation that forced us to even go deeper inside ourselves. Because, why? Because there is a new age that's coming. There is an opening. There's something being birthed. And it's obvious that if there's still wounds or issues or confusion or deception, so I love the idea of the shadow inside of you, that's not in your, it's not going to be in the future. So even if I had a dose of it, that future that is definitely the inevitable, I can't get there yet until I've sorted out the shadow inside. I usually call it algae. It's an acronym that, Deborah, you've heard me use a million times. A for anger, L for lust, G for greed, A for attachment, and E for ego. And I feel that that influence in the minds of everyone, whether you're a religious leader, a spiritual leader, even if you're an atheist, the president of a country, if the energy of that influence is motivating the way you think and see yourself and see the world, it's definitely going to create the chaos that we're witnessing today. And I think because we're seeing such an overwhelming amount of chaos everywhere, I'm realizing how beautiful of a gift it is now, because things that were always tucked away, deceitful and dark, but we didn't have the courage, or if some of us had the courage, like myself, like Michael Beckwith and so many more, when you spoke up, you would get some backlash from it, or you would be ostracized or pushed aside. Now you have such a vast community of voices that are supporting your speaking upness. But what I do also feel is that what this time is calling each and every one of us is the amplification of our inner silence. And I don't mean it's the silence of an absence of sound. I mean it's a silence that is amplifying its volume, that is connected to the energy of the purity and the innocence of the human spirit, which actually awakens in you and me our original religion, which is peace. So whether I am an Agape member, a Brahma Kumaris, whether I'm with a Christian movement or a Judaic movement or an Islamic movement, I will bring my religion into that culture, into that path, into that narrative, and I will make it look so beautiful because I know what my religion is. It is peace. And I think that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to a religion that doesn't divide anyone. It's something innate. It's in the soul, everyone. And I feel everything breaking down, and it could even be a health issue that's breaking you down. It could be not a pandemic. It could be a health issue. You're going deeper into yourself to make sure there are no more shadows remaining, no more algae, because the future has no room for that anymore. So I think it's a cleansing process, and I'm happy to be a part of the cleaning up process too.
Thank you, Sister Jenna. You know, the Dalai Lama always says, my religion is kindness.
Mm.
And it is true that all of the interfaith work really allowed people to see the deep values that you're talking about that are at the core of every spiritual expression.
Yeah. It fascinated me, you know, I happened to have come across something with T.D. Jakes and some of his people, and when I first saw T.D. for the first time talking to his congregation of no one, it made me sit back. I went, what time are we in? And in my quiet conversation with God, it's like God whispered and said, it's going to be every one of you that's going to check yourself. It doesn't matter what position you're in, but this is the time for self-serving, self-checking, self-evaluating, but evolving from this. And that's what makes it so powerful.
I also hear you and Victor both talking about another thing that the Dalai Lama frequently mentions, which is taking responsibility. That if we want to see change in the world, it has to start with us.
saying, I think Audrey also touched on that as well. For everybody who's even watching right now, if you've joined into this vortex, being curious about the role of religion or spirituality, we've all gathered because we know something within ourselves has to change. And I was thinking, all of this stuff that we've been doing for years, preaching, sharing our own experiences with the divine, it was with the purity of the intent that the humanity would become better. And so when we see it like this, for folks like me, I just feel sometimes almost so disappointed, but at the same token, invigorated. And the reason why is, okay, maybe I had to share and do what I needed to do because I was settling karmas inside of my soul, that I had to keep doing good deeds to sort out things within me. And that goes recognized and it goes into my credit. So don't think it goes to waste. But the fact that what has fascinated me is how tragedy becomes an instant wake-up call for people. And when there's love being fused, I tend to go to the Agape Spiritual Center a lot when I'm in California. And I always tell Michael, if you don't see me with the BKs, I'm signing up for you. And he always laughs at me. And he knows I mean it too. But every time I sit in his sanctuary, there is so much love there. And sometimes I would look around at everybody in the hall, but because they're so accustomed to the same energy, I don't think they were feeling what I feel when I would go there and visit. You know, so I think we've just gotten so accustomed to things that we have stopped valuing these pure voices of truth. And maybe everyone now is learning to listen to their own inner voice and tap into the truth of God's wisdom and love in each other, which I hope is what's happening.
I hope so too. And I'm really so honored to have you four voices, pure voices of truth, here in this sacred space together today. And thank you, Sister Jenna, for doing such a wonderful introduction for our next guest. Michael Bernard Beckwith is the spiritual director at Agape International Spiritual Center, a trans-denominational congregation in the Los Angeles area in California. And he's the co-founder of the Association for Global New Thought, which is how we originally met at the United Nations when the association was actively promoting this Gandhi King season for nonviolence, which I believe is still an ongoing project. And the only thing that I want to tell you, you probably all know Michael already, but the only thing that I want to tell you about him is my personal opinion, which is that he is the best preacher on the planet. So welcome, Reverend Michael. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh, Deborah, thank you so much for the invitation. And Audrey and Victor and Sister Dr. Jenna, thank you for laying out just such a powerful field of love and beauty and intelligence and peace to speak into. And each of you carried such a frequency and a vibration of explaining where we are today and where we need to go in terms of transcending a religion, in terms of transcending the personal mind, and to come to our ground of being, of which we are all related and emerge from the same luminosity, the same beauty, the same intelligence, whatever name we choose to call it. I call it the presence that is never an absence. And so thank you, you guys. You said everything, but I'll say this, that we're living in a time, we're living in an apocryphal moment, a moment of apocalypse. And oftentimes people, when they look at that word, they think it means the end of the world. And it does mean the end of a world or end of a world view, the end of a paradigm. And we know that there's a difference between the world and the planet. The planet is Mother Earth, of which we are all earthlings, and all of our nutrition and all of the air and all the ways that allow us to survive come from dear Mother. And then there's the world. The world is not the earth. The world is a collection of beliefs and opinions and positionalities and points of view and perceptions that individuals agree upon, which is why two people can be standing on the same spot on the planet, but be in different worlds. So we're in a moment of apocalypse. Another meaning of that means lifting the veil, in which the veil is being lifted and what was formerly hidden can now be seen. And we can begin to see the worlds that people live in a very bold way. We can see the shadow worlds that people live in terms of the greed, the hate, the supremacy, the racism, the total destruction of the earth, the rainforest, the oceans, and things of that particular nature. And we can see the rise of an ageless, timeless world of love and beauty and connectivity, both occupying the same space at the same time right now. We're in a total moment of alchemy. And I dare say that those of us who have been in prayer and in meditation for years, I know I've been teaching, I don't even want to say the number of years, but over 40 years now. And there's been many preceding us has actually helped create the field that allows for the hidden to be seen now. So a lot of things that we're facing is a part of the chemicalization of the darkness coming into view so that we can embrace it. And in embracing it, we can begin to transmute it and then transcend it. So the things that are going on the planet right now, it's largely due, I say, not only to the fact that the universe, the multidimensional universe shot from the mind, heart of love, beauty, intelligence, another name for God, is progressive. It's always moving forward to expand and reveal the nature of the spirit. And then we have co-created with this progressive universe to create such a field that that which is untenable can now be seen. So like all of you have mentioned, there is what I call the corona bonus. And that is the virus, the COVID, the harsh, deadly flu that has really compromised individuals who've had obviously immune issues and were already frail and sick, the most vulnerable of us on the planet, and taken many, many off the planet. Underlying that, all things work together for good, meaning all things aren't necessarily good, but because we live in a progressive universe, they work together for good. So the COVID situation has provided at least two bonuses for us, and many of you have already mentioned that. And that is, it's caused for us to have a moment of pause and reflection, so people can begin to ask themselves, when we're able to be removed from the sense of quarantine, do we still want to be these same people? Do we want to carry who we are now into the world on the planet when this particular phase of quarantine is over? So we get that opportunity to ask ourselves, what do we want to leave behind? What issues within ourselves, what wounds, what resentment, what animosity, what unforgiveness, what self-loathing, what self-doubts, what lack of self-worth may be operating that we may be projecting onto the world and onto other people. It's giving us a time to look at it. And many people are taking this opportunity to actually examine themselves. I mean, how much Netflix can one watch, And so we look, and so it gives us the opportunity to do that pause, that reflection, that embracing, that transmuting, and that transcendence. And the other bonus that it's given us, particularly during this particular time in which what was hidden from many people, it wasn't hidden from a lot of people, but it was hidden from many people, the systemic issue of racism. And injustice. Racism is how you think about somebody or feel about somebody. Justice is how you treat them. Two different issues, but injustice built upon systemic racism means that justice isn't blind. Justice peaks. And when justice sees a person of color or a poor person, or an LGBTQ individual, is a different form of justice when it peaks and sees a wealthy white person. You see, and so what the virus has done is it took away all the distractions. No more movies, no more football, no more basketball, no more bars open, all the things that people would normally be distracted from. They had to sit and actually watch the individual execute an unarmed man in broad daylight, in public, in front of everyone, which then allowed people to see Ahmaud Arbery's death, allowed people to see Breonna Taylor's death. It allowed them to see so many things that had been happening for so long. But when they happened, it was a momentary outrage, particularly among the people who were most affected by it. People who weren't that affected by it had an opportunity to say, that's not good, I don't like it. But they got quickly engaged back into the distractions. Season tickets to the opera. Let's go on our yacht and go boating. Let's go to the basketball game. Let's go to the movies. Let's go to a restaurant. And after a while, the only people that had a loud voice around what was going on were the people that was affected mostly. But the virus quarantined everyone. No one had any distractions. So people had an opportunity to see what was systemic in our society. Thus, the protest, the passionate protest, not the violence, not the looting that was done primarily by the Antifa, primarily from the white supremacists who hijacked the Antifa's websites and went out and did a lot of things in the name of the protest. But the passionate protest, as people could see, was not a black protest. It wasn't a brown protest. It was everybody saying, this must stop. And then, of course, it spilled over into the borders of the world, in which everyone, all the countries began to take down statues of racism or slavery, began to speak about the underlying issues of racism and bigotry that were not being talked about that much, except for people that were being oppressed by it. Other people who weren't being oppressed by it, maybe they weren't racist, but they weren't necessarily anti-racist. They weren't necessarily doing anything about it. They just said, that's not a good thing. I'm not a racist, but there was no movement of energy about it. So the virus has provided an opportunity for people to peek under the veil and see what's been going on for a long time, that people weren't just making it up, making excuses for being afraid of the police and things of that particular nature, so that the needle got pushed a little bit forward in terms of people acknowledging it, people now taking stands, coming to an understanding. It's not just good enough to say you're not a racist. It's now you have to basically say that you are against racism and you are for what every one of you have talked about, that there's a luminous being that we all really are, that transcends our sexual orientation, transcends our color of our skin, our ethnicity, our past, our religious backgrounds, our nationalities. There's something about us that emerges from the source of all creation. And so now we're in a moment in which things will not be normal again, because this is on the table, it's not being taken off the table. And we can begin to have a dialogue about it. And not just a dialogue, but we begin to do something about it. So passion of the protest must meet vision. All of us carry a vision. Both of you individuals, Victor and Audrey, carry a dynamic, a powerful vision of what's possible in particular issues of our society. We have to begin to articulate a vision of what justice looks like, what the legal system looks like, what healthcare system looks like. We have to articulate and continue to articulate a vision of what it means to take care of our planet, what it means to take care of all sentient beings, particularly the least vulnerable. So vision must meet strategy, and then strategy must meet implementation. Now, humanity is at its best when the technologies of personal transformation for our own transcendence, our own unfoldment, our own embracing the next stage of our own vision and version of ourself meets right thinking, and then right thinking meets right action, and then right action is about being an architect and a builder of the beloved community, a builder of a kind and just global society. So that the personal practices that we have of transcendence and transformation is not enough. It's the best of humanity is when that meets right thinking, and then guides us into right action. And everyone can't do everything, but everyone can do something based upon their skill, based upon their talent, based upon the capacities within them, so that we're actually building the kind of world we want to live in. So our personal moments of transformation allow us to weed out the shadow, allow us to become more conscious of who we really are, so that we're not just running around with our head cut off, being mad at something or being against something, that we're actually carrying the frequency and the vibration of what we're seeking to build. That's where the personal work comes in. And then right thinking is different from mentation or the regurgitation of thoughts and opinions and points of view that we had yesterday. Real thinking is inspiration directly from the heart and mind of God that leads us into action. So today, what we see happening is things that were hidden are now being revealed. And just a quick example, I know I probably went longer than you wanted me to, but under the aegis of all things work together for good, we see the occupant of the White House that decided to have his rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right around Juneteenth and right around the anniversary of the greatest or the worst massacre of Black people in American history. Now, what worked together for good was that there's so many people that didn't even know about that history that now know about it. They didn't know about the scar tissue that many of the ancestors of those people, their ancestors and their great grandparents were murdered at the hands of the Ku Klux Klan on that fateful night when they burned down the whole town. And many people didn't know about what Juneteenth was. So his movement to have the rally on that day opened up people researching and discovering parts of the history that many people, including Black people, didn't even know about. So we're in a very powerful moment right now. Things will not go back to normal, nor do we want them to. We want people to be engaged in articulating and building a kind of just global society, even when we can go back to the movies, even when we can go to a ball game, a baseball game or whatever, or even when we can go back to a club. We want to be engaged. And I think this has provided an opportunity to see something that we cannot unsee. I'll stop right there.
I could listen to you for a long time, Reverend Michael. And all four of you, I think you have so beautifully articulated this moment that we're in as we are in this darkness of the chrysalis, where the caterpillar turns to soup before it can grow its new wings. And I love the idea, Michael, that you put forward about this, the alchemy of the moment, because that is what happens in that dark place. And you've all talked about transcendence, that we can actually move as not only in our individual selves, but as a collective humanity. We can move forward into a new expression of who we are and how we live with one another and the beautiful planet that we are a part of. So I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to say some closing remarks. You might want to bounce off of what someone else said, or you might want to let us know what gives you hope for the future of humanity. Who would like to go next?
Well, I spoke a long time. I'll wait for some.
You can wait till the end and give us some closing uplift, okay?
I want to go after Michael because Michael doesn't know how much he's influenced my life in this last while. It was at the Parliament of the World's Religions when I heard Michael preach and speak and inspire and change our hearts before. But at that moment, on a panel with Sadhviji Saraswati and David Rosen, he talked about our sibling animals, And Michael, when you spoke, a lightning bolt went through my body and being, and I stopped eating meat at that moment. And I'm so grateful for you because it allowed me to look inside what was needed to be examined within myself. And that was such a powerful moment. And one of the things that connects to for me is this kind of paradigm that I see a lot in the world, which is how poor many communities, particularly communities in privilege and power, are dealing with grief, dealing with sadness, dealing with not just the big griefs of the personal losses that we feel, but the little griefs, the unfulfilled expectations, the hopes and dreams that didn't work out. And that grief, when it's not dealt with as grief and processed, goes to grievance. And one of the things I see in American society, where many communities, particularly sort of privileged or mainstream white communities, are so unable to or don't enter into the grief space, in the grief space. So it becomes grievance. So we have a culture, a dominant culture, that does not deal with grief, where grief goes to grievance. And so the projection of that grievance is the political world that we have, and particularly the president, who is the embodiment of grievance, unable to look inside, unable to reconcile those deep feelings. So one of the things spiritual communities can do is to help people enter into the blessed space of grief, that opens our hearts, not that where our hearts don't break into a million pieces, as Parker Palmer says, but instead, as he says, they break open, and they break open to each other, and they break open to the depth of our own beings. And so to me, moving into the grief and the sadness is part of that pathway forward.
Thank you, Victor. Audrey, what do you see as the hope for the future of humanity?
Thank you, Deborah. I think what I see as a hope for humanity is everybody in humanity, every individual taking responsibility and trying to do that ceaseless, fearless self-examination to see how we each must change to become better people. And that goes back to the spiritual discipline and practice, and to elevate ourselves to live life with dignity and honor and self-respect, so that we will be able to be in relationship like that. And I also see this growing activism among individuals who really want to be able to be engaged with global issues. And what we're seeing are all the activists out on the street who are really expressing their commitment to create changes on these significant societal issues. So that is very helpful as the transformation that is taking place in global movements. And that speaks to the awakening of civil society being able to feel and express their power to create these movements for change. Because when you have failed leadership, when you have failed states, you're going to have to look to civil society to actually step forward and fill those shoes. And so I'm very, very encouraged by these global movements. And of course, World Unity Week is a civil society global movement, and we're all participating, and it is World Unity Week. So it is that convergence point where we can all come together and express our being together and working together, living together to create transformation. And I recall you also wanted us to address this joint statement that was created by the Parliament of the World's Religions, United Religions Initiative, and the Religions for Peace, and the Interfaith Center of New York. And it's called This Perilous Moment. And it's a statement for religious leaders and communities on the crisis of racial injustice and inequity and the current protests. And it really ends with a call to action by all religious people and people of faith and non-faith as well. But it does, rally around the idea that as responsible persons, this is our moment, and it is always our moment to act and to be called to bring forth our best in all that we do. And when we can show this unitive consciousness to address social ills and injustices, we are at our very best, because therein is the expression of our hearts of love, compassion, and caring for each other. And I thank you so much for this opportunity to be with my brothers and sisters on this program who are very much into the forefront of the transformation of consciousness to help us all to move to the higher realms of consciousness, that we can all become better people and be reflective of that wonderful humanity and one living consciousness that is ever expanding into infinity. So thank you so much.
Ooh, amen, Sister Audrey. You've certainly given me hope for the future of humanity. Thank you so much.
And I'm the quiet one. And I feel that tragedy will keep inspiring us to be hopeful in unique ways. I'm hopeful that I am sensing the vibration and the energy of God's presence is becoming more amplified, because as much as we try to find solutions outside of ourselves, it seems like every time we go inwards, whether we're forced inwards because of tragedy or we're forced inwards because of love, no matter how we cut it, we're all going to go inwards, back to the soul, the self, and we're going to feel this gentle pull towards experiencing the divinity that God made us in. And so I'm hopeful because I know that the clock moves forward, not backward. I know the drama has got this beautiful story that's written, that because we're all of God's children, we're going to have to all end up good. So regardless of the role that one of God's children might be playing now that seems so dark and so ignorant, it's doing so much benefit, and it surprises us in many ways. But my hope is not only will we begin to feel the silence and the presence and the love of God's vibrations inside of the soul getting higher and higher and higher, I'm hopeful that we will enjoy this process of recognizing that there's this incredible world behind our eyes, and that every thought, every word, every decision that we make has a consequence. Now, am I feeding that to the future of the golden age, the illuminosity or the brightness of the future? Yeah, I think we're going to be doing that by force or by choice. But what I'd like to say as I come to a close, to each and every one of our brothers and sisters out there, I think I can speak on behalf of all of us. We invite you to pay attention to your thinking and to check, do they connect to your religion of peace? Do they connect to your religion of purity? And to what extent does it make the atmosphere and the environment and the vibration 50 million times more powerful than it is right now? So keep asking yourself the right questions, and know that there's so much about you. There's so much about you inside of you. There's so much in you. And if you can only practice a little bit more silence, prayer, consistency, there's a world that is so huge for you, that you feel definitely the future is definitely going to be bright. So I thank you guys for giving me this time, and to stay very sincere on your journey of figuring yourself out, because God's right there next to you.
Thank you, Sister Jenna. We are collectively raising our frequency. And I think that once we attain the next level of our evolution of our consciousness that Audrey was talking about, we will be in such a different place that we will be able to find the solution for things that have plagued humanity for generations, and truly build a new relationship with the earth and one another. Reverend Michael, I'm hoping that you could stay on with us a little longer until after the video and then give us your final words. Could you do that?
You want to show the video now? Is that what you're saying?
I would like to, yes.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So, Sister Jenna, would you like to introduce Teda Prince, or shall I do it?
Or I can if you'd like. Is Tata on now?
He is here with
Oh,
us.
beautiful. Well, just to put it in context, Lou Gossett Jr., as you all know, a Oscar winner, had called me about a music video that was being shot with John Legend and his nephew Tata Prince. And Tata brought together this these beautiful words because of all the gun violence and just the hate, for African Americans and just the loss of lives. And Tata's under the age of 18.
No.
Yeah, and he showed his father the song, and his father, who is John's brother, says, "Why don't you go show Uncle John?" So when he actually showed John the lyrics, he says, "That's pretty dope." That's pretty dope. So they went into a studio, they produced it, and Piper Dullums, who is the producer of this video that we're about to see, did a fantastic job. So Tata is a youth, a voice of truth. He believes in a better humanity. He wants to raise the vibration, and that's who we're going to say hello to is Tata Prince, the writer and the song and the rap or the music behind this beautiful song called Love One Another with his uncle, John Legend. Tata, welcome.
And
to the
other
Vortex.
surprise guests.
and Michael Beckwith and I were in that video together, and Michael knows that I love dancing. He and I were just doing the move, even though he knows I'm really bad at dancing, but he helped me. So anyway, I just wanted to bring Tata into the room. Hey Tay, nice to
Hey,
have you.
hey, how you guys doing?
We're happy
Great.
to see you.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, if you guys don't know, I'm a Tater Prince. And, during these hard times which we live in, from COVID to police brutality and other social issues, it seems as if the world is, my bad, someone's trying to call me, my bad. But it seems as if the world is falling apart. And that's why, I feel like it's important that we stop and reflect on this day and take an extra step to love one another. And, please watch my new debut single featuring John Legend called Love One Another.
And tell us also, you have some charities that benefit from the sales of this song?
Yes, ma'am. Feeding America and Second Harvest Food Bank that is here located in my hometown, Springfield, Ohio.
Beautiful. All right, Rachel, do we have the video queued up?
New York is the current epicenter of the coronavirus, with cases climbing past
CDC reports more than 9,000 healthcare workers have been
more than
infected.
30 million Americans have filed for
In
unemployment.
just 2 months, the coronavirus has killed more Americans than the Vietnam War.
During this historic time, we need to love one another.
Hey, Tavon, it's your mom. I'm just calling to check up on you, making sure you're doing okay. I also want to remind you that you can only love your neighbors as much as you love yourself. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're protecting your mind. I love you. Bye.
For my brother, for my sister, for my cousins and my lovers, for God's children. This is for these streets. This is for the way. You're feeling down. Come on now. Come and listen. We need to love one another, need to hug one another. We sell drugs for each other. A brother will say he love you, but he'll still kill you. That right there, don't. I got the blueprint, how I'm gonna save us. I have the blueprint, how I'm gonna make it. And everybody back home, I didn't forget about you. Don't focus on the current. Out. And if you lost in the hood, you can't get out. And it's the world savior. Watch me walk it out. Story of mine like that. I'm about to talk about how we go from being kings to fiends and out of dreams. Just to be a test star. And many times go down that road and they didn't get far. And if you tired and it's stressing, let this be a lesson. Love is the answer to all my brothers, for my sisters, for my cousins and my lovers, for God's children. This is for these streets. is a white man. Around and around we go, where the love at? And when you look in the mirror, do you love self-hatred, displacement? It's funny how the hate take on different faces, and how happiness can get you through the paces. And when you come out, you on top. And keep moving on, cause the hate don't stop. You gotta help yourself to get the love back. You gotta help yourself to get the love back. You gotta help yourself to get the love back. Now where the love at? Now where the love at? All my brothers, all my sisters, all my cousins, and my lovers, all God's children. This is for these streets. This is for the weak. Feeling down, come on now, come and listen. Love one another, love one another. Oh yeah. Hey, my sisters and my brothers, love one another. Oh yeah. Come on. Hey. My sisters and my brothers, love one another. Oh yeah.
Woo!
Where can we get it?
Thank
Can
you.
we get that? Where's it showing?
Hey, Vaughn.
Uh,
Online, I encourage everybody to just Google Love One Another. And you will find it and you'll hear it in its most glorious sound, not through Zoom. Tata, anything else you want to say? I think you've encapsulated the message of all the great religions of the world and spiritual traditions in one short message and one beautiful song.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I would like to say that, you know, oftentimes we all say that we love someone, but we never show the action. And so that would just be my message, is to, you know, put your love into action. You know, if you really love someone, show them, you know, with action. And that would be my message for today.
And I just want to add, please remember, you know, Tata is a young, inspiring future leader. And when we're supporting work that's coming out of the brilliance of the minds of our youths, so whether you hear the song on Spotify, iTunes, on YouTube, or whatever, to support the fact that a young voice took the time to put these thoughts on paper and took it to another level. It just goes to show the times that we're in, that the younger generation has risen up in ways that maybe ours just didn't. And I think it's time that we really support our youths of today and just keep being and doing whatever we can to move their narratives forward. Tata, we bow to you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You guys have a nice day.
Reverend Michael, would you like to close us out here today?
Sure. The song was great. I remember being there that day and filming. I did see I did make the cut, so I'm happy about that. But when you're speaking about love one another, as Victor was indicating, a part of the DNA of agape emerges from Dr. Howard Washington Thurman as well. And one of my quotes that I love by Dr. Thurman is that it is impossible to love humanity in general. You have to love humanity in particular. So to say that I love humanity has no meaning. It's an abstract. You have to actually love the person in front of you. You have to love the individual you interact with. You have to love the beings that you're on the bus with, or you see in the shopping mall or wherever. You can't just say I love humanity. And this song is speaking to that the inner work we have to do. We have to really sincerely fall in love with the beings that are in front of us. We're talking about that transcendent love of God, by which we see each other as expressions of divinity. And so, as Sister Jenna was saying, when we talk about, what gives me hope, that gives me hope. What gives me hope are the youth that are in the streets and their articulation of what must be stopped and their articulation of what must emerge in terms of the justice, in terms of the eradication of racism. Their articulation is becoming more and more refined And I have the privilege of working with some of these young people behind the scenes to help them forge their vision, not their vision, but our vision as they continue with this inexhaustible energy, because we know that vision without action is a fantasy, and action without vision is chaos. So that there has to be both. You have to have a vision with action. And this is what we're beginning to see on the planet at this time in human history. I don't know what else there's more to say other than the rich field that we're co-creating here together, the five of us, is planting seeds of awakening throughout humanity. And the luminous beings. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege to be captured by that luminosity, by that light, and I was temporarily blinded for a period of time and couldn't see. All I could see was the light that's everywhere in its fullness. And it took a period of time for me to integrate back into this world, and the residue is still here. And everything that we're saying about who we are as luminous beings, I saw the fountain of light in the people that were around me. Everything we're saying about who we are is not conjecture, it's not hypothesis, it's not a belief system, it's not old religiosity, it's real. And so through our spiritual practice, we see that, and then it compels us into right action to build the kind and just global society that this particular time of change is calling for. I will say that because everything is malleable now, that the world of phenomena is I say, fluxed up, now is the time to actually don't let it reform back to a previously held normal, to actually hold the vision and articulate where we're going so that it forms differently. Because as you indicated, Deborah, in terms of the butterfly, turning the caterpillar going into the butterfly, there's a moment in which the immune system of the caterpillar kills off the imaginal cells of the butterfly until, because it looks like a foreign agent, until there's a proliferation of the butterfly cells, and then it subsumes the caterpillar and becomes the new creature. So we must be aware that the old paradigm is going to try to stymie that which is emerging. There's going to be pushback, but we must not give up. We must not be daunted by the pushback of an old paradigm. We must continue to see the vision. We must continue to articulate it. We must continue to walk in that direction, because the proliferation, as we can see all these people on the street, is going to be too big to stop, because there's no central leader that you could assassinate, because the masses are out saying change must happen. This is a good time to be alive.
Amen. We are the imaginal cells. We are the light. Thank you so much, Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, Sister Dr. Jenna, Audrey Kitagawa, Victor Kazanjian. Thank you so much for showing us so much hope for humanity and all life on this beautiful planet that was gifted to us. And let us find a new way to live on it together with the simple message from young Theta Prince. All we need to do is to love one another. Blessings to all of you. On behalf of the Garden of Light, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Blessings.
Thank you for pulling us
Deborah.
up.
And thank you, Rachel, for helping us with this webcast today.
Happy to be here with you. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for participating today and for giving us the experience of true transcendence and the opportunity to reveal what I believe is everybody's opportunity here today and ongoing to become a walking apocalypse. Meaning, oh yeah, what were you gonna say, Michael? You got wanna go? Okay.
Hear what you have to say.
Okay, great. Yeah. So walking apocalypse. When two or more are gathered, then reality then begins to bend to the will of creation itself.
Yes.
And what a fantastic opportunity for us to get a clear vision during this time of stillness and to tune in into the subtle energies that were spoken to in our conversation today around what's really needed at the depths of our souls that are calling forward, that are in deep alignment to nature and life itself, for the continuation of our collective thriving for all life and all sentient beings on this planet, and to choose to orient ourselves to the future that we are calling forward, that is actually calling us to it. And it's been such a beautiful, beautiful time for us to experience what this has been together and to feel the opportunity that is in the stillness and the chaos. And for us to know what it could be like to fall in love with ourselves fully, so that we can fall in love with each other fully, so that we can fall in love with life fully, and then create from this place of majesty and playful joy and regain the innocence that some of us may have lost along the way as we embark on these new journeys together. Thank you so much. It's been a sincere privilege and honor to be here with each and every one of you and to share your wisdom and your deep insights and your commitment to call us all into our next iteration of life together.
Will this be available for people to see later?
Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Thank you, Rachel, for those beautiful words. And thank you for World Unity Week. So we want to encourage everybody to keep coming back and watching these programs. There's so much richness scheduled for the rest of this week, and on to the birthday party for the United Religions Initiative toward the end of the week, and many other just really wonderful events.
And thank you, Deborah, for holding such an exquisite space and bringing together such an amazing group of people today. It's so inspiring to be here with you all.
Thank you.
Absolutely.